This meeting is being recorded.
Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadadi Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamsa Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarini Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagaditaya Cha Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Mukam karoti vacharam pangam langayitam giram yat grahatam ham vande Sri Guru Dyanatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Om Pavitra Pavitra Va Sarvavastangata Piva Yashmaret Pundarikakshava Yantarashujihi Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Hare Krishna, Prabhus and Matas. First of all, please, forgive me if in case I speak anything wrong or anything that offends anyone. It is just for the purification of myself that I'm gonna speak today. And before starting anything, I want to take blessings from Srila Prabhupada, Guru, um, and all you devotees who are pretty, elevated, and I am no one to sit here and speak. It is purely for my purification. So in case I speak anything wrong, please forgive me. So today what we are going to discuss is we are going to discuss about Lord, probably about Indra's pride and how it actually created a lot of problems for him, despite of he being the heavenly king, right? So he is a king of the heaven, but still, he had to face a lot of problems because of the pride that has come into his uh, attributes. So this is there in Srimad Bhagavatam, sixth canto, and it starts around fifth chapter and it goes on till 11th chapter. So what we will do is, how I'm going to take this session is, I'm going to kind of refer two documents. One is Srimad Bhagavatam and another one is a small PowerPoint presentation. It's kind of, I try to make it more visual. So we'll go through the Srimad Bhagavatam from Veda base, as well as the PowerPoint presentation that I have at hand. So, with your permission, I would like to start with um, where it actually all has started with Indra. So, basically, the reason why I have picked up this topic is I wanted to be more tolerant. I was actually have taken a session for students at Abbott's on the topic tolerance in provoking situations that actually had touched my heart. And I understood that tolerance is something that we really need to practice if we want to go up in the ladder in spiritual or devotional service, because pride and tolerance, they're exactly antonymous, right? One is exactly opposite to the other one. So the more tolerance we have, the pride subsides, and the more in fact the pride starts from the kind of appliances that we get, right? So when we get more and more appliances, aham starts. It's like aham, I mean, I am doing and I am the doer, and we try to lord our material nature. The moment that we get more appliances, the moment we get more appliances, pride starts. And the moment pride starts, your tolerance levels goes down, because we think that we don't need to be tolerant the moment we get more appliances and more pride. So this whole topic of discussion today is gonna revolve around pride and tolerance, and why we need to practice tolerance. So in current situation, or in current era, it's like in Kali Yuga, um, there are many distractions which actually keeps us away from the goalpost, right? When I say many distractions, firstly, in Kali Yuga, the memory goes down and intelligence goes down. So which means when we try to focus when you compare it to people who were in Satyuga, if they had to put just 1 hour for reading a paragraph, in Kali Yuga we might have to spend an entire day for reading the same paragraph which was read within an hour in Satyuga. So in Kali Yuga is an era of hypocrisy and quarrel, and hypocrisy and quarrel obviously brings down your memory and intelligence, because of which we kind of tend to move away from devotional service. And with having said this, coming back to distractions, if we think of different kinds of distractions, there are many distractions, right? These distractions actually keeps us away from following the four regulative principles, and one of those distractions is intolerance also. We'll try to understand why we need tolerance for focus. For example, let's take consider a sheet of paper. When we were small children, we might have done, all of us might have done that experiment, right? So if you take a piece of paper and then you'd want to burn it with an expansion glass, both are the kada. So if you want to burn it, what you have to do is you have to put that paper in sun, and then take this expansion glass, concave or convex, whatever it is called, and then put it in between the paper and the sun rays, right? So and then we slowly keep moving it, so that there comes one focal point where the sun rays are so concentrated and put on the paper that can even burn the paper, right? And when we are trying to focus it, we need to be so patient and tolerant not to move the glass. If we move the glass, the distractions or the moving of glass would actually take the focal point away, or it makes it more blurred, and the light density or intensity is spread over, and then the paper is not burnt. So we can understand how much focus we need to put in terms of holding the glass so tight and stable, right? Like that, the focus always keeps us on the goalpost. But when we are distracted even a little bit, it actually takes us away from the goalpost, and again it takes a lot of time to reach the goalpost. Likewise, uh, intolerance is one of the biggest distraction for us from the goalpost. and we will try to understand how it is in today's session. This is the discussion topic for today. Right? Let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, bro.
So what happens one day is, okay, we'll read this. As I said, we'll take it from two documents. One is Veda base, and another one is the presentation. So I just first read this, and this only I am going to read the summary of each chapter. So in seventh chapter, Indra actually offends spiritual master Brihaspati. So as related in this chapter, Indra, the king of heaven, committed an offense at the feet of his spiritual master, and spiritual master for demigods is Brihaspati. Brihaspati therefore left the demigods, who then had no priest. However, at the request of demigods, Viswarupa, the son of Brahmana, Twasta, became their priest. So again, this is gonna detail now. Once upon a time, Indra, the king of demigods, was sitting with his wife Sachidevi and being praised by various demigods like Siddhas, Charanas, Gandharvas. When Brihaspati, the spiritual master of demigods, entered the assembly, Indra, being too absorbed in material opulence, forgot himself and did not respect Brihaspati, who thus became aware of Indra's pride in his material opulence and immediately disappeared from the assembly to teach him a lesson. Indra became most repentant, understanding that because of his opulence, he had forgotten to respect his spiritual master. He left the palace to beg pardon from his spiritual master, but could not find Brihaspati anywhere. Because of his disrespectful behavior towards the spiritual master, Indra lost all his opulences and was conquered by demons, who defeated the demigods in a great fight and occupied Indra's throne. King Indra, along with other demigods, later took shelter of Lord Brahma. Understanding the situation, Lord Brahma chastised the demigods for their offense to their spiritual master. Following Lord Brahma's orders, the demigods accepted Vishwarupa, who was a Brahmana and the son of Twasta, as their priest. Then they performed yajnas under the priesthood of Viswarupa and were able to conquer the demons. So this is kind of first part of the discussion. So what actually has happened here, just to summarize, right? So Indra was always, as usual, he was completely indulged in, enjoyment and luxuries, right? So if, as you can see in this image, right? So Indra was kind of, with his opulences, he was so engrossed in enjoyments, and then that has led him to a situation where he actually disrespected his spiritual master Brihaspati, right? So the spiritual master for the demigods is Brihaspati, and when he was so intoxicated and indulged in these kind of luxuries, he completely forgot, because this is, if you look at it, when we are, that's why we have to be very careful not to break the four regulative principles. So one of the reasons why Prabhupada was so strict on following regulative principles is, in fact, the following regulative principles helps us gain more and more focus and attention towards spiritual progress. For that matter, any progress, it need not be spiritual progress. Even if you want to progress materially, you know, we were told or we were asked to follow those four regulative principles, right? When we were children, in schools, these are the four regulative principles actually were taught to us, to actually have more and more focus towards our academic progress. Likewise, even if you want to have spiritual progress, the four regulative principles were very, very important. And if you look at it, intoxication is one of the regulative principles that we are supposed to follow. But people with more and more opulences, they tend to break that one of the regulative principles, where they get a lot of intoxication and then they go out from their actual goalpost endeavors. And with this, what has happened was, Indra was also similarly indulged in these intoxications, and he has completely, his eyes became blind, and he could not respect his spiritual master. And then Brihaspati, actually, it is said, I mean, if you go to this chapter 7 and then read it, it clearly explains Brihaspati can actually read through even future. So Brihaspati knew what's going to happen. Despite of knowing that, he went to, I mean, what I meant by Brihaspati knows future is, Brihaspati knew that Indra is not going to respect him. Knowingly, he went there, and then, as expected, Indra did not respect him, and then he disappeared. why he disappeared? He could actually have tolerated Indra, because spiritual master is very merciful. He can actually forgive, and then even at times spiritual masters takes the offenses and sins that the disciples have done. But Brihaspati in this scenario, he wanted to teach a lesson to Indra, and then he wanted Indra to follow right footsteps. With that thing, what he has done is he disappeared from there. Then come Indra got a situation. In a sense, like Indra, is not at in his consciousness to understand that Brihaspati has disappeared. Then his wife Sachi comes to him and then tells that, hey, your spiritual master Brihaspati has come when you are indulged in dancing and all these intoxication, and then we could not respect him enough, and he disappeared. And along with Indra, they were demigods also. They were also part of this. So Brihaspati got so disappointed and then disappeared. Now, when Brihaspati disappeared, it was again planned by Brihaspati, right? And when he disappeared, Indra is like, it is such a big offense that we don't know what's going to happen, right? Now, if you look at what has happened after this, Indra has lost all his opulences. How he has lost all these opulences? If we actually go back and read through the scriptures, it says that when Brahmanas are happy, they actually can perform yajnas well, which are again for the satisfaction of Supreme Lord. Right? When Brahmanas are not happy, yajnas are not properly performed. And when yajnas are not properly performed, Supreme Lord is not happy. When Supreme Lord is not happy, the demigods are gonna lose their strength, wealth, happiness, and opulences. Now, this bad news or the sad news that Indra did not respect Brihaspati reaches Brahma. Right? In those days also, bad news spreads faster than good news. It is not just in Kali Yuga, it is even in Satyuga also. Bad news always spreads faster than good news. So what happens is the bad news goes to Brahma, and it reaches Brahma even before Indra goes to Brahma. Now what has happened was uh, Brihaspati left, and this bad news reached Brahma as well. It has reached Daitya's place also, right? When I say Daitya's place, it reaches Sukracharya. Now, Sukracharya, we know that he is very, smart and cunning, right? So, what Sukracharya does is Sukracharya very, strategically, he actually teaches all the Daityas, saying that, Indra disrespected Brihaspati, and Brihaspati left the heaven, and then wherever Brahmanas are not happy, that's when the people are the residents of that specific place are gonna be weak in strength, opulence, happiness, and whatsoever. Like Ashtalakshmi is gonna leave them, right? So what happens is now Brihaspati left, and then this news even went to Sukracharya. Now Sukracharya has come up with a plan. The plan is to have and create, get the military, the Daityas military ready to attack demigods and heavenly planets. Right now, with Sukracharya's suggestion, all the demigods, all the Daityas starts attacking the demigods. So when they start attacking demigods, Indra and demigods have already disrespected Brihaspati, so they don't have power and strength, anything to go back and then fight with uh, the demons, right? So Indra and all other demigods have to get defeated by the demons who are under the direction of Sukracharya. Now Indra has got a problem. Now if you look at it, this is the first place where pride defeated your opulence, right? So Indra is so prideful, because of which he has made an offense, and then he had to lose all the things. So this is what happens to us also in real life. When we get if you're in academics, when you get good ranks, we should not be so prideful of those ranks. Or otherwise, when we get promotions in office, or when we get more and more opulences, or more and more properties, or for that matter, when we get spiritual wealth also, in the sense like, tomorrow we get a pat on the back by our Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru, or, we get more and more recognition for whatever services that we are offering in spiritual matters. Even for those things, we should never and never have pride in our mind. The moment pride reaches our head, that's the point where the fall starts. It could be spiritual or it could be material, right? So as in this example, Indra has lost his kingdom. Indra and all the demigods have lost their kingdom. So now the resort for them is Brahma. So this news already has reached Brahma also. So Indra along with all the demigods, they reach Brahmaloka, and then they start requesting Brahma. right? The moment they start requesting Brahma, in fact, the moment they go, Brahma already knew that as this is a bad news and has raised him. Brahma says, I know about this situation. Now Indra asks for forgiveness, and then Brahma says, Brahma wants Indra in this case. Because of your pride, you are inviting troubles time and again, is what Brahma says. But then Indra pleads Brahma so much, then Brahma gives him a idea or a mitigation plan. Now, to execute any mitigation plan, priests are very important, right? Now, who is the priest for demigods? For demigods, the priest is Brihaspati, and now there is no priest he is actually, in fact, the savior for all the demigods in heavenly planets, and he himself is not there. Right now, what Brahma does is Brahma suggests an idea, mitigation plan to Indra. The plan is Brahma asks Indra to go and meet Viswarup, and Vishwarup is son of Twasta, right? Twasta, I mean, actually, in fact, Indra is the son, Viswarupa is a three-headed Brahmana. He has three heads, right? He is a three-headed Brahmana, took birth in the womb of Rachana, who is again from Daitya's dynasty. So Rachana is from Daitya's dynasty, and Twasta is from Brahmana dynasty, and they both give birth to Viswarupa. So if you look at Viswarupa's roots, he has gotten affection for both Brahmanas as well as Daityas, because his mother Rachana is from Daitya's dynasty, right? So, okay, now what happens is, we'll go back and then again try to read from Vedavis. So, Indra offended spiritual master. This first part is done. Now, the second part is Narayan Kavacha. So, Narayan Kavacha, I will not go into details. We will discuss about this during the end. We'll go and talk about appearance of demon Vratrasura. So, this is the second part of the discussion. Here, what happens is, yeah. So before this scene, before appearance of Vratrasura, what happens is, Vishwarupa, as I said, he's a three-headed man. Brahma requests Indra to go to Vishwarupa, to request him to become priest, the substitute priest for Devatas, because Brihaspati, who is the priest of Brahmana, is not there right now, right? So what happens is, on Brahma's order, Indra and other demigods, they go and meet Twasta and Rachana, and then they request, can you render your son as a priest for us? Then Twasta says, go ahead and speak to Vishwarupa. Now, when Indra goes to Vishwarupa, he has gotten three heads, right? So with one head he eats, with another head he actually chants mantras, hymns, and then with the third head he speaks to Indra. Then Indra requests him, and he narrates the entire story, and then he kind of humbled by what has happened to him, and then he in fact requests he requests Vishwarupa to become priest. And then now Vishwarupa is not so keen to become a priest, because he's gonna become priest to whom? To Devatas, who are like very opulentous, right? So when you go and perform puja for very opulentous people, what will happen is, the dakshina or the remuneration that you get is gonna be very huge. One sec, I'll have some water. So here, what happens is, Vishwarupa is little skeptical in terms of becoming a priest, because when you go and, even in nowadays, what happens, right? So when we perform Vastu Homam or Gruhapravesham, what happens is, depending on the size of the house, Brahmanas demand, right? Like that in olden days also, if you are trying to go and perform yajna, in those days they didn't used to demand, but it used to come by default, because it is said that at the end of yajna, the Brahmana, those who perform the yajna, have to be satisfied, so that the sacrifices that they offer to Supreme Lord will be great, right? So what happens is, Vishwarupa is little skeptical in terms of becoming a priest for Devatas. Why? Because Devatas are having so much of opulences, because of which it is possible that with the opulences that he gets, he might also get pride. See, I mean, how intelligent the Brahmanas in those days are. So Vishwarupa, being so intelligent, he actually, in the beginning, he becomes skeptical, but then when Indra says that he was sent by Brahma, Vishwarupa finally agrees to become priest for the demigods. Then what he does is, he starts doing a yajna, right? That yajna is called Soma Yajna. Swami Yajna means a yajna which actually uh, as a result of that yajna, nectar comes out, right? So now Viswarupa came along with Indra and then started performing Swami Yajna. The moment he started performing Swami Yajna, nectar starts coming out. Now, if you look at the roots of Viswarupa, he has got both Brahmana as father and a Daitya as a mother, Rachana, right? Now, what happens is when he's chanting hymns, we say Swaha, right? So when you say Swaha, to whoever, say Swaha, it is offered to them actually. So we perform Sudarshan Yajna, right? In which case, we chant the hymns of Sudarshan. And if we perform any other yajnas like Vastu Homam or Navagraha Homam, you actually chant those hymns of Grahas and all those things, which means you are trying to offer your yajna dravyas to those specific grahas or things like that, right? Now, when this yajna, Swami Yajna is performed, there is nectar coming out of it, and that nectar also would be offered to someone, right? So when Viswarupa is performing this yajna, he was chanting hymns in such a way that part of it is offered to uh, his father side and uh, gods, and little bit is also offered to daityas also. Why it was offered to daityas? Because he has part of his roots, motherly roots, maternal roots are from daityas. So he was chanting those hymns which actually make sure that the nectar is offered to daityas also, right? Now Indra comes to know about it. Now the second state of provocation comes to Indra, right? If you look at this, is this not a provoking situation? It is a definitely a provoking situation, because Indra requested Viswarup to become priest, and he was giving all the money and all the things, yajna dravyas that are needed for performing the yajna. But what Viswarupa is doing is he was giving part of the nectar, the resultant nectar out of the Swami Yajna to Daityas also. But actually, if you look at it, why Indra had to do all this? Because of Daityas attacking him only, right? Indra was attacked by Daityas. That's where he wanted to get his kingdom back, and that's the reason why he's trying to perform this yajna, right? Now, one sec, please. Yeah. So part of the nectar was given to Daityas also, right? Yeah. So when the part of the nectar was given to Daityas, now Indra is very angry on Vishwarup. Why? Because he was the sponsor of this yajna, and at the end of the day, Vishwarupa is coming and giving the nectar to his motherly side also, maternal side also. And with that, he gets so much angry, and then he comes and then cuts three heads. What are the three heads? The three heads are Viswarup's heads only, because we said that Viswarup is three-headed, right? He used to eat with one head and chant hymns with another head, and with another head he used to talk to Indra, right? So he's three-headed Brahman, and then Indra removes all the three heads. This is where comes the problem. Now Viswarup's father Twasta was so disappointed. He gets so angry. Then he starts chanting hymns to actually create more and more enemies for Indra. Now, if you look at it, when Twasta was chanting those hymns, he makes few mistakes in chanting those hymns. So during that process, what happens is, um, instead of creating more enemies for Indra, he creates a demon. That's what is explained over here. Let's read through this one. Right? As described in this chapter, Indra the king heaven killed Vishwarupa, and therefore Vishwarup's father performed a yajna to kill Indra. When Vratrasura appeared from that yajna, the demigods, in fear, shout shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and glorified him. This is an abstract of this chapter. Let's go through, what's written in this chapter. Because of the affection for the demons, Viswarupa secretly supplied them the remnants of yajna. When Indra learned about this, he beheaded Viswarupa. But he later regretted killing Vishwarupa because Vishwarupa was a Brahmana. Although competent to neutralize the sinful reactions for killing Brahmana, Indra did not do so. instead of he accepted the reactions. Later, he distributed these reactions among the land, water, trees, and women in general. Since the land okay, here this is something that is very important if you look at it. So now Indra has had to go through the repentance of what he has done to Vishwarupa, because Vishwarupa is a Brahmin, and then he killed Vishwarupa. So whatever repentance that comes, he had to bear that reaction. Now Indra had gotten the powers to actually neutralize the reactions, but he did not do that because he wanted to undergo the repentance, and that's how he wanted to nullify his pride and things like that, right? So here what happened is, when he got that reaction, he distributed to four things. He distributed to what are the four things he distributed that to? Land, water, trees, and women. Since the land accepted one-fourth of the sinful reactions, a portion of the land turned into desert. So that's why we have gotten deserts. Deserts are nothing, they're useless, right? You can't do anything with deserts. So why there came deserts? Because part of the sinful reaction that Indra has gotten, he gave it to land, and that's where the desert got created. The trees were also given one-fourth of the sinful reactions, and therefore they drip sap. They become dry in one of the seasons, right? Which is prohibited for drinking. So they become dry, and then they release some kind of liquid. We cannot drink it, right? And then women also, he distributed that to women also. The third party he distributed to women, and as women accepted one-fourth of the sinful reaction, they also become untouchable during the menstrual period. See, I mean, what kind of reactions that are coming in because of killing a Brahman, right? Since water was also infected with sinful reactions, when bubbles appear in water, it cannot be used for any purpose. If you observe, the dirty or filthy, the stinking water always gets bubbles, and then when water gets bubbles, you are not supposed to drink it, right? So this way he distributes his sinful reactions to land, water, trees, and women, right? So if we consciously observe this one, when the king of a kingdom had to undergo some kind of repentance or the sinful reactions, the entire kingdom suffers. That is very clearly visible over here. The land, water, trees, and women are suffering because of whatever thing that has happened with Indra, right? After Vishwarupa was killed, his father Twasta performed a sacrifice to kill King Indra. Unfortunately, if mantras are chanted irregularly, they yield an opposite result. This happened when Twasta performed this yajna. While performing the sacrifice to kill Indra, Twasta chanted a mantra to increase Indra's enemies, but because he chanted the mantras wrong, the sacrifice produced an asura named Vratrasura, of whom Indra was the enemy. When Vratrasura was generated from the sacrifice, his fierce features made the whole world afraid, and his personal effulgence diminished even the power of the demigods. Finding no other means of protection, the demigods began to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the enjoyer of all the results of sacrifice, who is the supreme throughout the entire universe. The demigods all worshipped him because ultimately no one but him can protect a living entity from fear of danger. Seeking shelter of demigods, instead of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is compelled to trying to cross the ocean by grasping the tail of a dog. A dog can swim, but that does not mean that one can cross the ocean by grasping a dog's tail. Being praised with demigods, the Supreme Personality of God advised them to approach Dadichi to beg him for the bones of his own body. Dadichi would comply with the request of demigods, and with the help of his bones, Vratrasura could be killed. So this is the story. Now let's go back to the presentation. So now what happened? So this is how Vratrasura was looking like. He had gotten golden gray hair, which was actually touching the sky, and is so fierce. And how did Vratrasura born? Twasta, who is the father of Vishwarupa, chanted hymns to actually take revenge on Indra. And while he was chanting, he chanted the mantras irregularly. In fact, in Sanskrit, very minute difference are, even if you add, even for example, if you say Binnam, Abhinnam. Binnam means different. Abhinnam means non-different. So adding just one A or A makes a lot of difference, right? And on top of that, if you look at it, if it comes into Savarna Dirgha Sandhi, what happens is A plus A it becomes A. And at times, if you, and Trikasandhi, I mean, if you know Telugu grammar, you will understand this. Trikasandhi, Trikasamasam, Savarna Dirgha Sandhi, these kind of, Savarna Dirgha Sandhi makes A plus A equal to A. And Trika, what it does is A plus A is A, it's not A. So when you chant Sanskrit hymns, even if you, instead of doing Trika, if you do Savarna, what happens is, it exactly becomes opposite, right? So when Twasta, it is, if you go and read further, you will understand that Twasta made a mistake. The mistake was, instead of he saying produce more enemies for Indra, or instead of saying that create a power that actually can kill Indra, he makes a small mistake and he says that that means that Indra produce something that can be killed by Indra. That becomes like that, right? And of course, all this is planned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are like just the instruments, or Twasta was just an instrument in that. So what happens is he creates a demon called Vratrasura, and this demon, he was supposed to kill Indra or supposed to attack Indra, but because of the irregular chanting hymns by Twasta, that becomes opposite, right? So now it means that Vratrasura is going to be killed by Indra, right? But actually Vratrasura is not so easygoing guy, so he's so powerful, so fierce, and then everyone is scared of him. And on top of that, if you go further into reading, even Vratrasura is very powerful, and he's in fact a devotee of the Supreme Lord. He cannot be killed by Indra. He's so powerful, he can definitely not be killed by Indra. But because he is Vratrasura is a devotee of the Supreme Lord, and Indra now goes to Supreme Lord to request for a mitigation plan, because Supreme Lord has planned for this. Vratrasura accepts defeat. That we'll understand now. Okay. Now what happens is, now Indra had to run away from Vratrasura, because Vratrasura is very powerful, and with Twasta, with so much of revengeful attitude, he created Vratrasura. Now Vratrasura starts attacking Indra now. Though Indra has gotten his kingdom back by the mercy of Vishwarupa, who has performed the yajna, Vratrasura again attacks Indra. Now this time Indra goes and then hides himself in the stem of a lotus, and he stays there for 1 year. Indra, along with all the demigods, he stays there for 1 year. Then he goes to Supreme Lord. Now Supreme Lord is final resort. Now Brahma is not going to tolerate him, because Brahma already gave one mitigation plan, and that mitigation plan also gone for a toss. Now Indra finally goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all the demigods along with Indra praise the Supreme Personality of Godhead and asks for forgiveness, and then asks for a mitigation plan. That's when the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives a mitigation plan, where he says that go and request Dadichi for his bone, for his backbone. That will become the weapon, which is nothing but the Vajrayud, right? That will become a Vajrayud with which you can actually kill Vratrasura. And if you go and then try to understand the reason behind the backbone of Dadichi being so strong, is he has gotten Narayan Kavach. Narayan Kavacha means there are like 8-syllable mantras and 16-syllable mantras, and then those mantras were chanted, and then they touch different parts of the body: head, navel, shika, and then hands, and then they chant, and then those mantras, and then touch the specific parts of the body. That's how the Narayan. It is in fact, it is said that you can actually chant these hymns to get Narayan Kavacha only when you reach the status of a demigod, right? So even the prerequisite to chant those hymns is you have to become a demigod. That's when you get that Narayan Kavach, right? So Dadichi has gotten this Narayan Kavach. Now, Indra was asked by Supreme Lord to go and reach Dadichi and then ask for his backbone. Now Indra goes to Dadichi. Now, when the moment Indra goes to Dadichi, Dadichi knew, because he's so powerfully, so very powerful saint, right? So Dadichi knew that Indra has come for his backbone. Now, before even Indra opens his mouth, Dadichi says, "Can you expect anyone to give their life for something?" Says. Now Indra is like dumbstruck. Then he understands, Dadiji is not an ordinary being. He actually can understand why I came from, why and what I came for. Then he tells, I was sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indra says to Dadiji. Then Dadiji says, yeah, I was just kidding with you. I know that you are sent by Supreme Personality of Godhead, but I wanted you to realize that no one gives their life for something, right? Life is so important for anyone, because even it is said in Shastras that we have to take care of our body, so that because this body is a media to go back home, back to Godhead, right? So we have to safeguard this body so nicely, so that it helps us, or it actually, what do you call it actually goes in conjugal with us, so that we can actually do the devotional service better and go back home, back to Godhead, right? But here, if you look at what the concept of Dadichi, yes, it is definitely, body is so important, but when your body cannot be put in the service of the Supreme Lord, it is useless. That's what Dadiji thinks. Of course, it is true, right? Why do we practice all this devotional service at the end of the day? To get out of the cycle of birth and death, go back home, back to Godhead. Now Dadiji is so intelligent, right? So he tells, okay, take this body, because Lord Vishnu has sent you, and at the end of the day, any process or any progress is just to go back home, back to Godhead, right? So, and Dadichi goes into meditation, and then he stops his breath, and then finally, he leaves his body and goes back to serve the Supreme Lord in Swetadvipa, right? Now, after Dadichi leaves his body, Indra takes his backbone, and these bones were given to Vishwakarma, who makes it the Vajrayut, right? Indra's weapon. And with that weapon, he goes and fights with Vratrasura. Now, if you look at it, it is so strategically planned, right? Now, Dadiji wanted to teach all of us a lesson that if you have Narayanastra, Narayana Kavacha, it is gonna make you so strong, so strong. This means that anyone who has Narayan can actually be very strong. I mean, when we say strong, it is not like building six pack and things like that. But when you have Narayan Kavach, it gives that mental strength that we can face anything. This is what Dadiji has taught us over here. He has got it. He has got a Narayan Kavach, and he is mentally so strong that he actually can leave his body for something good, right? And Indra was asked by Vishnu, so he actually just left the body, and he tried to teach a lesson to all of us that if you have Narayan Kavach, you're going to be so strong with that strength. If it can be used in that strength again has to be used in the service of the Supreme Lord, so that you can go back home back to God. These are the two things that Dadichi teaches us over here. Now Indra takes the bones and then gives to Vishwakarma, and the Vishwakarma makes the Vajrayut with that, and then taking that Indra goes ahead and then tries to fight with Vratrasura. Now Vratrasura is very powerful, very very powerful, that the demigods have to literally run away even in the war, right? But Vratrasura again is a devotee of the Supreme Lord, right? And then when, having said that, if you look at it, we have seen many great personalities, characters who are so strong, but for the supreme cause they actually leave their bodies, right? So Vratrasura was fighting Haithar and Taithar with Indra, and no one could actually withstand. And then what happens is Vratrasura thinks, okay, so basically he creates such a great problem for Indra, and then finally he actually himself surrenders and gets defeated by Indra, because he wanted to serve the Supreme Lord within whatever capacity he could, right? Now let's go back and then try to read chapter 10. So this is the battle discussion that is between demigods along with Lord Indra and Vratrasura, right? It says, okay, it says, as described in this chapter, after Indra obtained the body of Dadichi, a thunderbolt was prepared from Dadichi's bones, and a fight took place between Vratrasura and demigods. Following the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the demigods approached Dadichi Muni and begged for his body. Dadichi Muni, just to hear from demigods about the principles of religion, jokingly refused to relinquish his body. See what Dadichi did. Dadichi Muni, just to hear from the demigods about the principles of religion, jokingly refused to relinquish his body. But for higher purpose, he thereafter agreed to give it up. For after death, the body is usually eaten by low animals like dogs and jackals. Dadichi Muni first merged his gross body made by 5 elements into the original stock of 5 elements, and then engaged his soul at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he gave up his gross body. With the help of Vishwakarma, the demigods then prepared a thunderbolt from Dadichi's bones. Armed with the thunderbolt weapon, they prepared themselves to fight and got up on the backs of elephants. Right? At the end of Satyuga and the beginning of Treta Yuga, a great fight took place between demigods and asuras. Unable to tolerate the effulgence of demigods, the asuras fled the battle, leaving Vratrasura, their commander in chief, to fight for himself. Vratrasura, however, seeing the demigods fleeing, instructed them in the importance of fighting and dying in the battlefield. So, see, I mean, what kind of fight that's happening over here? It said that, unable to tolerate the effulgence of demigods, the asuras fled the battle, leaving Vratrasura, their commander in chief, to fight for himself. Vratrasura, however, seeing the demons fleeing, instructed them in the importance of fighting and dying in the battlefield. One who is victorious in battle gains material possessions, and one who dies in the battlefield attains a residence at once in the celestial heavens. In either way, the fighter benefits. So if we actually read it, what Vratrasura is saying is, he's very intelligent. He even knows Vedas. He is clearly saying, I mean, whoever, the Daityas, the demons who are fleeing because of the effulgence of demigods, he started instructing his battle that, you should not run away. You should not run away. You should rather stay back. for two reasons. If you win, you will become victorious and you will get heaven. If you are not victorious, in case you die, you will go to heavenly planet. So he even knows Vedas, right? Scriptural injunctions. So he is instructing his battle to stay back, right? And then let's go to 11th chapter. Yeah, we are not going to discuss the transcendental qualities of Vratrasura. We can read through it. We'll just go through how Vratrasura dies. This chapter describes how Indra, the king of heaven, killed Vratrasura despite great reluctance. After Vratrasura finished speaking, he released his trident. He released his trident against King Indra with great anger. But Indra, using the thunderbolt, which was many times more powerful than the trident, broke the trident to pieces and cut off one of Vratrasura's arms. Nevertheless, Vratrasura used his remaining arm to strike Indra with an iron mass, making the thunderbolt fall from Indra's hand. Indra, being very ashamed of this, did not pick up the thunderbolt from the ground, but Vratrasura encouraged King Indra to pick it up and fight. Vratrasura then spoke to Indra as follows, instructing him very well. See what Vratrasura is saying. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, he said, is the cause of victory and defeat. Not knowing that the Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes, fools and rascals try to take credit for victory or defeat themselves. But everything is actually under the control of the Lord. Right? Yesterday, whoever have attended Vedant Chaitanya's Prabhu session, we can actually collect one thing, right? The same statement he also told yesterday. What is it saying? Fools and rascals try to take credit for victory or defeat themselves, but everything is actually under the control of the Lord. So yesterday, one story that Vedant Chaitanya Prabhu said is when Nimai Pandit defeats that Goddess Pandit, that Kashmiri Goddess Pandit, right? So Goddess Pandit gets defeated, and then he tells that yes, you're great, you defeated. But what Nimai Pandit says is, no, I did not defeat. It is when this Kashmiri speaks 100 slokas in a
Keshav
single
Kashmiri,
shot.
Prabhuji. It is
Yeah,
Keshav.
Keshav Kashmiri, correct. Keshav Kashmiri speaks 100 slokas in single shot. Then, our Nimai Pandit remembers 64th sloka, third line, which has gotten a fault in it. And then he points it. Then Keshav Kashmiri, falls flat and says that, you're so powerful. I can't even repeat all the 100 slokas that I've just, chanted. But you could remember the 60, every single sloka, out of which you remember the 64th, out of which you remember third line. And then you could actually point the fault, he says. Then Nimai Pandit says, it is not our greatness, it is the Supreme Lord's greatness. If he could actually create a person who could actually create, on the fly give 100 slokas, he would definitely create another person who actually can find faults, remember those 100 slokas and find faults also, he says, right? So the same thing comes over here. Fools and rascals try to take credit for victory or defeat themselves, but everything is actually under the control of the Lord. No one but him has any independence, right? The Purusa, the enjoyer, and Prakriti, the enjoyed, are under the control of the Lord. For it is by his supervision that everything works systematically. Not seeing the hand of the Supreme in every action, a fool considers himself the ruler and controller of everything. When one understands, however, that the real controller is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is free from the relativities of the world, such as distress, happiness, fear, and impurity. Thus, Indra and Vratrasura not only fought but also engaged in philosophical discourse. Then they began to fight again. So see the beauty here. Being a demon, Vratrasura could speak scriptures, and then he encouraged his opponent to again get up and fight. Right. This time Indra was more powerful and severed Vratrasura's remaining arm. Vratrasura then assumed a gigantic form and swallowed King Indra. But Indra, being protected by the talisman known as Narayana Kavacha. This is what we were talking about, right? He was safeguarded by Narayana Kavacha, was able to protect himself even within Vratrasura's body. Thus, he emerged from Vratrasura's abdomen and severed the demon's head from his body with his powerful thunderbolt. Severing the demon's head took one complete year to accomplish. See, I mean, he was one for an entire year. He was there in the stem of the lotus, and again to even fight Vratrasura, and then even to you know completely cut his head. To cut the head, it took 1 year. See, I mean, how powerful Vratrasura is. Even such a powerful demon, Vratrasura, gives off his body. It is not because Indra is so powerful, because Indra has gotten one Narayan Kavacha, and second thing is Vratrasura is a devotee of the Lord. Hence he surrendered to the Lord, and then Indra was sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's how he actually accepted to get defeated by Indra. right? So if we look at this story, there are two times where Indra actually made mistakes, right? So we'll go to the summary of it. I think I will not not going to take more time than probably another 10-15 minutes I'll take. So the summary of the story is Indra first instance, he actually blasphemed his spiritual master, because of which he had to suffer. Astalakshmi goes away from him, and then again he reaches Brahma, and then requests, and he gets another priest, and again he makes another mistake. He gets provoked. The provocation is that Vishwarup actually gives part of the nectar to his maternal relations. Again, he gets provoked, and he could not tolerate that provocation. He goes and beheads Vishwarup, and because of that, what was the result? Again, he had to lose all his wealth, appliances, and all, and then he had to go and sit in a stem of the lotus, right? And he had to suffer for 1 year there. Then again, he realizes himself and undergoes and goes and surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, asks for a mitigation. Right? That's when Supreme Personality of Godhead this time, releases him by suggesting him to go and get the Vajrayut. Right? So if you look at it, it is always possible that we get provoked. We lose our tolerance. We become so intolerant for provoking situations. But at the same time, if we remember that there is Supreme Personality of Godhead and spiritual master, we can go and take forgiveness and then ask them for mitigation. And they're being, knowing the repentance effects of whatever mistakes that we do, they can actually suggest us. Right. So that is one of the reasons why, especially in my life, when I get any stumbling blocks, or when I make any mistakes, I go and reach my Shiksha Guru and then try to explain what mistakes I have done, and then try to take suggestions from him. Most of the times, it is very difficult to have access to our spiritual masters. So what we can do is we can go to our Shiksha Gurus and then take a suggestion from them to understand what better can be done. Right? This is about being tolerant in provoking situations. And even if you're not tolerant, what could be the mitigation plan? And one another example that I have, probably I will not go through that example, but I'll just summarize it. So if you look at Jadabharata's story, right? He's first Bharata, he's King Bharata, and then when he was King Bharata, he has gotten so many appliances. Those appliances have distracted him, and after taking Vanaprastha, he actually gets attached to a deer, because he was that attachment tendency goes on and on, right? So if we are attached to something, that so it is said by Radheshyam Prabhu once, making mistakes is not a big thing, or breaking the four regulative principles is not a big thing. If we repent, we can actually come back, but making the mistake actually creates more and more attachment, or tendency to make more and more mistakes. If I'm indulged in intoxication, that point in time, it may not be creating so much damage, but once I get indulged in intoxication, that indulging creates more and more tendency or attachment towards getting intoxicated more and more. This is the danger of breaking any of the four regulative principles. So making the mistake is not a problem. That making mistake actually creates more and more attachment and tendency to make more and more mistakes, right? So in case of Bharata, what happened was he was so attached to material things that attachment did not go, and that tendency did not go even after he took Vanaprastha. During Vanaprastha, he was so attached to a deer, and then in his next life he had to take birth of a deer. But this time we might get a question: if Supreme Personality or Vishnu or Krishna is controller of everything, why did he give a deer's body to Jadabharata? He says, his devotees never perish, but why still he gave birth to a deer? He gave that deer's birth to Bharata. At the same time, he gave such an intelligence to the deer, with which he could actually practice devotional service. Right? The deer used to go and stand in those places where the saints were performing homas, yajnas, and things like that. And it used to listen all the scriptural hymns, and at the same time, it used to even eat dry grass, not even wet grass. Such a kind of austerity it used to practice. With all these kind of austerities, the deer could actually, after death, it again gets the body of Jadabharata. Now comes an interesting thing, right? Jadabharata tolerated so many things. What are all the things that he tolerated? He tolerated Shitoshna, Sukadukka, Manapman, all the kinds of dualities he faced, right? Shitoshna, if we go back and read Jadabharata's story, he was so tortured by his siblings that he was made a scarecrow. We know scarecrow, right? In the farming fields, we put a doll kind of thing which actually scares these crows, so that the crows and birds doesn't come and eat the seeds, right? So he was actually made literally a scarecrow. He used to sleep, eat, stand there in the fields itself, bearing Shita Ushna. Shita means cold, Ushna means heat. He used to bear both cold and heat there, being a scarecrow. And then Sukadukka. if you're talking about Sukha Dukkha, this is the situation, right? What has happened here to Jadabharta? He was bearing Sukha Dukkha in the sense like dacoit's king wanted to behead him before Kali. So before beheading, what they usually do is they will give nice bath and they anoint lot of nice perfumes and give nice clothes. They put haldi and everything. They may, before beheading, they make the person feel like a king because they wanted the person to be so happy, opulent, satisfied, whatnot, right? So Jadabharata was made to eat full, like whatever he wanted to eat, he was made to eat full. And then he was anointed with lot of perfumes. He was given nice clothes, golden ornaments to wear, all these things, so that he had to be so happy. So if you look at it, he was bearing Shuka now. After all that Shuka, they took him to the sacrificing place and then they wanted to behead. That's when the dacoit's king wanted to, behead him. And that's when he underwent dukkha, right? He had a nice foods, ornaments, and nice perfumes. All those things were sukha. And then when he was about to be beheaded, he was undergoing dukkha. So he underwent sukha dukkha. He underwent sitoshna. Now mana apamana. Mana apamana means glorifying. Apamana means blaspheming, right? So in the third stage, after he escapes from this situation, he actually goes and carries the palanquin of the king, right? The palanquin, in the palanquin, out of 4 people, one person gets some little sick, so he was out. Now they tries to find another person. That's when Jadabharata was walking on that way. So the king calls him and then asks him to carry it. So he becomes the 4th person to carry the palanquin. Now, when these 4 people were walking, carrying the palanquin of the king, there come small ants. See, look at the Jadabharata's consciousness. When he looks at the ants, he doesn't even want to harm ants, right? Which were so insignificant, right? So he doesn't want to step on the ants, so he walks zigzag, so that he doesn't step on the ants. That's when the king starts blaspheming him. What does the king say? The king says different things like, "Oh, why are you dancing? Are you weak?" Then he further criticizes the king. What does he say? Yeah, you are so thin. We know, right? Jadabharata is well built, but still the king criticizes him in such a way that you are so thin. Yeah, it's possible that you might not be able to bear the palanquin. And then further he says that, yeah, you have been carrying me since so many miles. But if you look at it, Jadabharata just took the responsibility of carrying, and the king is criticizing, saying that, yeah, you have been carrying me for so many miles. And then he says that, and you're the only person carrying me. How many people are there? There are 4 people. But still the king criticizes, saying that you are the only person carrying me. You're so thin and you have been carrying me for so long. So these are kind of provoking terms that the king uses, right, to criticize. Why? First of all, if you look at it, criticism is so painful. When someone criticizes someone, it goes and then pierces through the heart, right? We might have seen in movies or even in our regular life, we see that, right? We try to provoke or criticize someone, not to hurt physically. You can slap someone, you can physically hurt, you can physically hurt someone, that goes off over some time. But when someone pierces your heart by talking or criticizing things, it pierces your heart, right? So the king is trying to tell Jadabharata that, you're so thin and you're carrying me for so long and you're the only person carrying me. Making such kind of statements, he really criticizes. So what the king is doing here, he is doing apamana. He is trying to criticize, right? And then mana. So after it is said, after all this criticism, then this is the first time Jadabharata starts speaking. Till now he never has spoken. Now Jadabharata starts speaking. The moment Jadabharata starts speaking, then the king understands, and then he really jumps out of the palanquin. He jumps out of the palanquin and then he surrenders, falls flat on the feet of Jadabharata and tells that, please forgive me. And he, at that point in time, the king even says that, even if I make a mistake to demigod, I might go to hell. But when I make a mistake to a learned person like you, I don't know what kind. The supreme personality of Godhead is not going to forgive me. Okay? He really asks his forgiveness, and then he praises Jadabharata a lot. He says that this, that, you're a learned scholar. I didn't realize. Please forgive me. He says all these things. What are these things? He's actually praising now. And earlier, what did he do? He blasphemed him. So if you look at it, Jadabharata really tolerated Sitoshna, Sukadukka, Mana, Mana. Finally, what has happened? The king, the Raja of the kingdom is coming and then offering his obeisances to Jadabharata. This is what happens, right? So we have to be really, really tolerant in provoking situations. That's when you get the fruits of it. Now we have to be really even be tolerant in devotional life also. It is possible Maya is everywhere, right? At times Leland Prabhu says, right, in SSR sessions, where do you think Maya is? Maya's main duty is to sit among the devotees. It is nowhere, because other people are not following regulative principles. They can see the prime goal of Maya is to do screening test, the toughest screening test, which actually helps us go back home, back to Godhead. So Maya's duty is to check us and then stop us and perform all the tests so that we can't pass. And because Maya doesn't want us to go and disturb the people who are sitting in Goloka, right? So Maya creates all these provoking situations. So wherever there are devotees doing Harinam Sankirtan, that's where Maya's place is. They want to come and really disturb you, so that you get distracted and get into material life, right? So Maya tries to. In fact, Krishna says, right, Maya, Mama Maya Duryaya. It is very difficult to defeat Maya also. So we have to be very, very careful. So when Maya even can create provoking situations even in devotees lives also, so we need to be very, very careful on whom we are dealing with, and we need to understand that Maya is actually trying to create all these problems, and the devotees who are friends and family, relatives, all these people who are actually trying to create these provoking situations, it's actually not them. They are just instruments, right? They're trying to create all this. It's Maya who is trying to create all these provoking situations. So we have to be very stable, like Jadabharata. Do not make mistakes like Indra, so that at the end of the day, we all can actually go back, come back to Godhead by tolerating all the provoking situations. So the summary is be very tolerant. It can even happen with devotees, family, friends, relatives, everyone. So be tolerant and be patient with the provoking situations, and practice devotional service well, so that you don't get distracted by the provoking situations, and your focus is so hard and tight, like the expansion glass burning the small piece of paper, so that your goal is achieved of going back home, back to Godhead. I think I'll stop here. So probably we might not have any questions in these situations probably, but yeah, if there is any discussion, we can take it. And if I don't know, probably I'll have to pass those questions to other senior devotees that we have in this group.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you for your wonderful session, Prabhu. So you said what consequences about the pride and tolerating the situations around us.
Yeah.
So Indra has, in the story which we have learned, Indra has few provoking situations.
Yes.
But in our day-to-day life, we see a lot of provoking situations. Boss is shouting, family, and there are many. So
Yes.
how do we tolerate such provoking situations?
We always have to remember the goal, Prabhu. So I'll tell you one thing. I had one friend, right? He's very aggressive, very, very aggressive, and he wants to become a politician. Okay, so he's very aggressive. Whenever in our group, he talks a lot and he makes a lot of noise, and then he gets really angry for small things. But when he goes to that MLA, that MLA really, blasphemes him like anything. Obviously, we know the politicians, right? Even for smallest mistake, you get a lot of blasphemy, right? When he gets blasphemed before that MLA, he doesn't speak anything. So if you look at this example, when things are under your hand, when you have the capacity to lord over certain things, you would become you would become intolerant. But when you go to a place where you are not entertained, or things are not in your favor, or your hand is under the rock, then you keep quiet despite of whatever comes on your way, right? So we should always remember that your boss is boss, and your focus has to be exactly on the goal. And remember that the intolerance that you show is going to take you away from the goal. And you should always, even it's not need not be with your boss, even if it's with your family, friend, or relative, or for that matter spouse, treat them like boss, and treat them like, if you showcase any intolerance, you are going 10 miles away from your goal post. So if you're not able to tolerate your boss, your promotion gets delayed, or the kind of benefits that you get despite of doing so much hard work might get delayed. And on the other hand, if you get those benefits, it could be monetary, or it could be promotions, or whatever it could be, you can use them in Krishna's service. And at the end of the day, many people do it for those benefits. We are not doing social service, right? We are doing more and more service, spending day and night to get more promotions, more hikes, more bonuses, which we could actually at the end of the day could definitely use in Krishna's service. So think of the person who is provoking as really a big boss. then you will keep quiet, because those places where we cannot lord over, we try to keep calm. Does it help, Santosh Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you. I had one more question to add.
Sure, Prabhu. Yeah.
So as you were explaining about the Jadavarta story about
Yeah.
the Kali killing the
Yes.
is it that what Kali has done is also tolerance or intolerance? What way you have to see?
Okay. Now, if you look at it, I'll take it this way. Now, the people who are fighting in the borders, they've had to fight and shoot the other people when they get cannons from that side. Is it called intolerance? No, it is not intolerance. It is justice. So what Kalima has done is a justice. What Jadavarta has done is tolerance. What Indra has done is intolerance.
Okay, thank you so much.
Basically, anything that is taking you away from your goalpost can be bucketed into intolerance, Prabhuji.
Okay.
If your goal is to become spiritually advanced, even if there is some provoking situation, say for example, let's say yesterday we met. For instance, say that you did not say bye when you're going. You always say, Prabhu, I'm leaving, I have to go far, and then I have to leave, and then you come to me and then say bye. And when I leave, before I always, come to you and then say I leave and all, right? Say there is a day where you kind of could not say that. I might get disheartened. That shouldn't happen. You need to be tolerant. You have to think like, okay, Santosh Saitya Prabhu had some work probably, because of which he didn't say that, say hi, bye and all. And this is how we need to understand Prabhu. Yeah.
Got it. Is there any other questions? Please put forward to Prabhuji.
Yeah, we have Ayer Prabhu, Akinchana Prabhu, Prashad Prabhu,
Krishna Prabhuji.
Sunil Sajja Prabhu. Anyone wants to add, please add to this, Prabhu. Please add to this. I mean, and please forgive me if I've spoken anything wrong. Please add to this. You all are very elevated, so please add to this.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Dandat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Very happy to hear your class, Prabhuji. Actually,
Hare
today
Krishna.
morning I was contemplating. Yesterday I was hearing Krishnan Prabhuji's class from NVCC, and he was telling how important is it to get the taste of chanting, and that is one thing which will help us in this life. Nothing else is going to help us. So I was just contemplating. We are so much involved in so many other things that we have forgot to sit at one place and chant, which is the topmost priority. And we want to prioritize everything else, even when it comes to even if it comes to Krishna consciousness. At least I would say for myself, I am more interested to do many other things than to sit at one place and chant. So I was feeling so much miserable today morning that I couldn't sit and chant 4 rounds at one single place with full concentration. It's a great struggle for me. And I want to get up, go out, walk, or do something, or check my mobile. Something is popping from inside, and it was getting really frustrating of what situation I have been put in. And your class gave the hope. You told that
Krishna.
Maharaj was so much tolerant. He went through lives, and then, but Krishna didn't leave him. He was helping him in each life. In each life, he was progressing. He was tolerant enough. So I guess that is the key. We have to tolerate, we have to be patient and struggle enough. And one thing I would like to ask you, Prabhuji, since you are so much advanced.
Prabhuji, I am not advanced at all. I'm like fallen of the fallen.
You give so many good ideas which is helping us to progress in our spiritual life. So I want to take advantage of it, and I'd like to ask you this question, that we know that, at least I know that I'm not struggling enough. When I am in my office, I struggle enough to get a good impression on my boss, on my project and my clients, so that I can grow. But when it comes to spirituality, most of the time, 90% of the time, I don't put so much effort or struggle while chanting. I just do it and complete my 16 rounds. So how can I get out of this situation, bro?
Sure, Prabhuji. So there can possibly, within whatever small knowledge that I have, there are like two things that we can actually apply. I will just echo what Yugal Kishore Prabhu has spoken during the last his India's visit. So one thing that he said is, when you are struggling with chanting or when you're struggling with service, that is the best day. go to Krishna or Jagannath or Gauranga and then tell that today I do not have taste. I absolutely have no taste, but still I came for you. You can say. So you have to say, today you look at me, I'm like so fallen. I'm not at all even interested to see your face. Despite of that, I forced myself to come and see you. And that's when, the mercy comes. And he was narrating one of the story that he had in, I think, in Boston temple. That day it was like, it is so dry. He was not even feeling like going before altar. He went before altar and he was so quiet like this for so long. And then he told Krishna that, I'm so fallen. I'm not at all feeling like chanting today. I didn't even feel like looking at your face. And that's when Krishna gave him enthusiasm, and then he started humping and bumping with good kirtan. Then suddenly the Prabhus and Matas who were standing behind him there started asking him, "You're so silent till now. How come you suddenly started banging on and jumping hither and thither?" So that is the best day, Prabhu. If you're not feeling like that, go and commit that. Go and just speak to Jagannath. Say that today is the worst day in my life, but still I came for you. If you want, you make me enthusiastic. That's one thing that we can do. And second thing is, Prabhuji, if you look at our materialistic thing I'm coming to, so we try to achieve things by spending more and more time because those are target driven. So even I speak to I tell this to myself, and I share with my spouse Sucharita also. There has to be a sadhana chart, and it is always good to have targets in spiritual life also. Praveen Prabhu was sharing when I met him, when I had the opportunity to meet him last time. He said that he joined one group, the chanting group, where they mandate to at least chant one round out of the 16 rounds. One round you have to chant and listen here. Without that, if you could not, if you can't do one round out of 16 rounds, chant one more round. If you want to be in that group, you need to make sure that you chant at least one round, chanting and hearing. That's when you can actually post say that today I did that. If you're any single day you are not able to chant at least one round, you will have to be out of that group. That is the target that Praveen Prabhu had. I felt like when he was talking about it, I felt like this is a target that we had with client projects and engagements also. Right? You will have this target, $2 million this month, or this project like probably $50 million. We have targets, and it is driven by targets like that. If you can actually, initially it sounds very fanatic to have targets in spiritual life also, but if we keep a sadhana chart and then try to put targets ourselves, it might help us. Because Prabhupada says, why do we chant? One person comes to Prabhupada and asks, Prabhupada, why do we have to chant? Prabhupada says, for doing better chanting. So any mistakes that we do, small mistakes, the way it increases the tendency to make more mistakes, the chanting, when we gets better, it gets better and better, right? So better chanting is to make better chanting. That's all, Prabhu. Yeah, this is my thought process, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I'll try to do that. Thank you.
Hari Bol. Yeah, if there are no more questions, Santosaji Prabhu, I think we can end the session here. Akinchana Prabhu, Praveen Prabhu, Sunil Prabhu, Venila Mataji, anyone wants to share your ideas over, tolerating provoking situations, you can please share. We still have a few more minutes. Okay, Santosh Prabhu, I think we can end it over here.
Sure. If there are no other questions, we can end the session.
Sure, Prabhu.
I thank each and every one of you for kindly joining the sessions. So it is a wonderful session by His Grace Udayananda Prabhu.
It's not wonderful, Prabhu.
Really, from the morning, it was really melodious from your end.
Hari Bol. It's probably the effect of yesterday's session.
It was very hope-giving session. Thank you.
Yes.
Hari Bol. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha कृपा सिंधुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Dandavad.